Hi everyone, it's Laura from Green & Company, and today we're going through August subscription box. And in your box you'll have 3 different pumpkin sizes. For this tutorial I am only going to go through the first pumpkin, the one in the front, just because it has its extra little piece there. So what I'm going to do is get started staining, and then we can work on some painting while that dries and continue on there. So in your box you'll have a yellow, which is butternut, then pumpkin spice, you have a white, you have the whole wheat stain, and then you have the khaki green for the leaf. And as I'm standing here, I am just realizing I gave you way more stain than necessary, so you'll realize I was thinking, because you know I do these ahead of time and then I come back and put your boxes together, that I stained all of them, and then I realized nope, we just stained the front. So we're going to stain the front pieces of each, and then we're going to stain the top piece of the pumpkin, and then we're just going to paint everything else. If you want, I guess with all the extra stain, you can stain the backs of them if you want, but it wasn't supposed to be that way. So I'm just going to set those off to the side for a second, and we're going to start with that. So you grab your stain, grab your foam brush, and some gloves. Just get a little bit of stain there. Okay, foam brush. So for those of you who may have never done one of our boxes before, we're using a water-based stain, so that way they dry fast, and they're water-based cleanup or water cleanup, so very easy to do. We're only doing one side because this side has the adhesive, so we're just going to take it, dip it in our foam brush in the stain, and I like to turn it on its side and just wipe with the grain of the wood there, just like that. And then I'm going to give that a wipe and wipe all of that off. And as stain dries, this will lighten, so it won't be quite as dark. And then I'm just going to go and do the little top stem as well. So if you have extra foam brushes in your stash, then you'll need 2 of them well, the one for staining, and we're going to need it for painting the front of the pumpkin, and I'll explain why once we get there. So when you're done staining, if you don't have another foam brush, then go wash this one out right away and squeeze out as much moisture as possible, because you're going to need it to be a little bit drier, so you'll use it for the painting of the pumpkin in the front. So okay, so next you're going to grab your pumpkin, the middle and the back pieces. So this part here is to help position the piece in front of it. So there's no point painting in there, so your painting part is going to be really easy. And the stem part, same, you don't even have to stain that, because it is going on there like that. Yeah, just like that. Now I didn't create this file, so I'm just noticing that I think you may want to go and stain a little bit on here, because I noticed her stem, even though it's on there, it shows just a slight edge of the wood underneath. So just to prevent that, I'm just going to rub a little stain on the edge of that, and I forgot that I had noticed that on my sample. So nothing fancy, just kind of wipe some stain. Take your brush that you had, if you hadn't cleaned it already like me, just enough. There, just like that. Nothing, that way when you do put it on, it's not going to be sticking out noticeably. Okay, so put those off to the side, and then we'll go ahead with the pumpkin, or nope, the butternut color. So for this you'll want to get, you can either use your 1/2 inch brush or your 1 inch brush. You're going to have to use most of them and probably wash out one of them because you'll need to paint 3 of them. And if you need your baby wipes, just in case you get some paint on the edge, you'll want to have those as well. Okay, so get some paint on there. You won't want a ton, and just brush it out, because if you go down like this, you're more likely to get it on the edge. So if you go this way, then you're less likely to get paint running off the edge. And if you don't have that much on your brush, then you should be good too. See, just, whoops, I got a little bit there. Okay, and then flip that around. Like that, and check your edges. Okay, put that one off to the side, and same thing with this one. So this part is fairly, it's fairly simple to do. It'll be the front that will give you a little different technique, so we can get that really chippy look there. Okay, so in between coats, if you have a little bag you can stick this in, then it doesn't dry out. Since I'm only doing 1 pumpkin at a time, I should be able to keep it fairly fresh. So just let that dry really quickly. While that's drying, I'm gonna go ahead on my leaves here. So that one will be on the green. It doesn't need very much, that's why it just in your little mini pots. If you have things like these little trays and stuff, you can always just pour the paint out of that mini pot, because really you don't need a whole lot. I'm using a leftover makeup sponge because there's no point starting a new one. So just dip it in the paint and then blot most of it off. It's almost dry, and then you're just going to do that one side. Now these don't have adhesive on them because they're pretty much going to dangle. Now when I tried to hang them on there, they kind of wanted to do whatever they wanted. So we are going to need a little bit of glue after, but nothing too much. So now just watch your edges. I mean, this is a color that's pretty much the same color as your sides, but if you have too much on your makeup sponge, then you might just get some extra drips on the sides. So you can see that. Change the angle of my camera stand, so I gotta keep checking on it. Okay, so let those dry. Those are almost dry. I'm gonna give that just a second. Now for this one, we will paint it eventually, but from being engraved, it can get a little charring on here. So if you take some sandpaper and sand that off, then it will lighten and it'll be easier to do the painting over top after. I'm just going to do it off camera so I don't get it all in my paint. So see, just like that. So that's just a 400 grit. If you've got a 120, it'll get down a little bit more. But either way, you should be able to get it off so it's not all too yellow. And sometimes too, you can just take your baby wipe and give that a wipe, and it should wipe it off as well. So a couple little tricks there. So just gonna give those a second to dry. This is already dry. sand. You guys can see me here. Okay, same thing. We're just going to repeat, and do that second coat of paint. Okay, so 2 coats should be enough for this. So I'm just going to go grab a, oh, I've got a bag here. Bag. You shouldn't need your brush anymore, but we're going to use a foam brush here shortly. Okay, so I'm going to do these. Okay. Okay, that's the first one. Okay, there's go. That is done. So set that off to the side, and these as well. We'll come back to this later. And so we are going to need your front piece. So by now, if you're, if it's fairly warm in your space or the fans are going because it's really hot, this should be dry. So we're just going to give it a sand. All right, now you're probably wondering what's in that little tiny container in your box, and that is Vaseline. We were gonna do wax, but the order isn't here yet, and Vaseline works just as well. So you're gonna need your Q-tip, you're going to need your popsicle stick or tongue depressor, and you are going to need that little container. While you're waiting for me, because I gotta go get a Q-tip, if you can take an X-Acto knife or something and just kind of score it across a few times so you can snap it. You just want a straight edge. So whether or not you actually have like a putty knife, you could use that. For those who don't have a putty knife, that's why we sent you this. I did my samples with this, so I know that it works. So it's just fine. So however you got, just go and get yourself a flat edge of something, and I will be back in 2 seconds with a Q-tip. Okay, I'm back. So what we're trying to do is create a resist so that when we pull on this, when the paint is dry, it will remove the paint and give you that chippy, look. If you don't like that at all and you just want 3 painted fronts, then by all means, you can do whatever you like to the front. If you like what we did, then this is what you'll do. So you'll take your Q-tip, and we're just going to put some on there. Now you're just going to be kind of random about it. You don't want to put it on too thin, so that way when you go to paint, you're kind of just painting it away. You want a little bit left behind, but nothing too goopy. So just kind of do it random. Don't even have to be neat about it. More squiggles, the better. You can get those edges. Really, and you'll be able to see what you're doing because you can see the shininess on the surface. And I know you probably can't see exactly what I'm doing, but let's see if I can get, of course, the light. So you can kind of see those darker spots. So that's what I've done there. Put a little on the edge if you want. But yeah, so that's what I've done on this one. So I'm just gonna put that off to the side. Now the whole reason I don't want you to use your good brushes is because once you get creamy, waxy, greasy stuff in there, then you really got to clean it out with like a really good brush cleaner or odorless solvents and stuff like that. So if we ruin a foam brush, then it's no big deal. So so you're gonna need your foam brush, your paint, your stick. Oh, and I forgot to mention, you will need a blow dryer or a heat gun, something that can just dry this fast, just so it doesn't take a very long time to sit and dry, because we're gonna cake on the paint just a little bit more than you're used to with me. Okay, so let's get a little bit more paint here. So I'm just gonna put some back in my container. Okay, so this one, the grain of the wood is going from, you know, side to side. So that's how I'm gonna wanna paint. If your grain, depending on how I cut your wood, if your grain is going up and down, then you're gonna wanna paint that way. So just watch how those lines go through the wood is the direction you're gonna wanna paint. So I'm just gonna turn it sideways because it's easier for me to paint. Now, when we're painting this, we're gonna put some on our brush, just like this. And when we're painting, we're kind of not going to push that hard. We're kind of just going to drag it over the surface, especially so that we don't mix the wax in too much into our to the Vaseline. I mean, we want it to be there, but we don't want to play with it too much. So just gently drag it across. This brush is not very good. Okay, there we go. And you just don't want to play with it too much. If you can just play, I don't paint with foam brushes a whole lot, but I don't really have a whole lot of paint there either. Okay, so just gently, you know what, and if you have to, pour your paint on the container. Like, you can pour it out if you want, but you just want to make sure you just get enough so that you can pull it across without, I mean, if you have an old brush that you don't care, that's, you know, from the dollar store, which I probably could have grabbed, but then I would have just, you know, grabbed that. But just drag it across. It's fairly thick on my end. Like, I'm not really worried about how neat this is, because the messier kind of the better, and we are tending to go all over the place, but this, I think this foam brush is just a little bit too stiff because I've used it over and over. Okay, so just drag. You're just gonna watch your edges after. We can always clean that up. And just pull it across. Yeah, this wasn't a very good foam brush. Yours, guys, this should be better than mine. Okay, just gently. So you'll use a lot of paint on this front part, but I don't know if you can see it, but I've got it fairly thick because we want that texture. So I'm just gonna try and, I might just pounce it on there. And that works. So if you don't want to drag it anymore, just pounce it. There we go. And that's fine, because once I start pulling on it, it's gonna look just as messy anyways. Okay, so if I left this could take quite some time to dry. So if you take your blow dryer, I'm gonna do mine on low. I'm gonna just speed this up, so I'll either talk really loud or I just won't talk much at all. So as it dries, you'll be able to see where the wax was underneath, because the paint will look for sure really textured under there. Now, it doesn't have to be like totally dry after, you know, we do this. If it's still a little soft, that's fine because it'll make it easier to pull the paint. Okay, so I'm just watching. Oops. Okay. Now, if I was to put my hand on this where the wax, like where the Vaseline is, that's where it's going to look shiny. So it might actually appear wet, but if I touch just where the paint is, it's dry. So what I'm going to do is take my stick or your palette knife, and you're just going to gently, you're not pulling too hard, you're just gently going, grazing over that surface. Just very lightly. You don't need to put a whole lot of pressure. And it will start to peel off. See, I can get some of that off. So just have like a paper towel there so you can wipe that off. Now I'm going to come back and I'm just going to turn and I'm going to go in the next direction. Just very lightly pull this across. And you'll start to see the paint come off. And I just keep going around in pulling from each side. Okay, wipe that off and then come back. Now if you didn't put enough on, you may actually have to press a little harder on your stick so that you can really pull on that wax that's underneath. So right now I am fine with this. I'm gonna just see if I can pull off a little bit more here. There we go. Okay, so now I'm just gonna dry it a little bit more. And as I do that, that heat's gonna warm up the wax, so you can kind of see where it melts that Vaseline a little bit more. So you can go, if you're having a hard time getting it to distress, you can come back and pull a little bit more. And then if you want, just gently give it a wipe and help just blend that wax. It'll kind of act as a sealer over the paint, but then it can kind of just even out the shininess of it. And then we'll let it dry and then we can put it on in the front. So that's there. Oh, I gotta wipe my edges a little bit. So you can try and wipe them as you go, but when you're trying to do this really fast, sometimes you can forget to do your edge here. So just, if you take your nail underneath that baby wipe, you usually can rub that off as long as you haven't put too much paint on the edge. There we go. Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna let that sit there for just a little bit. And we're going to go on to the next little bit. So we'll go on to doing this. So when you've got your white out, when you're doing your white, this is when you can do this. Now it's fine left in its natural state, but I kind of wanted to blonde it a little bit. So that's why I'm just gonna take my white and just dip my baby wipe in it and then just give it a wipe across so it kind of washes out that yellowness to the wood. And it will take me a minute to get in my bottle, guys. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Okay, so grab your baby wipe. I'm just going to use the one I had here, as long as it's a clean part, and give it a dip, and then just kind of, I'm not sure what you can see. Okay, and then just take it, and I'm just wiping mine on my tray so it just evens that out and really takes off most of that. And you're just going to very gently over the, whoops, that's still got too much. Very gently just hit that top surface because you still want to see those words or that word, and you don't want to put the paint in the inside. So you just want to give it gentle washed out look. I mean, if you would like it more solid white, go right ahead. That's totally fine. I just really liked the look of it just being washed out. So it'll be a little light. There we go. So just make sure to get as even as you can. It'll look kind of really wet because of the baby wipe and stuff, but it'll dry, and it should be fine. Okay, there we go. So I'm just gonna leave it. Some areas might look darker because it's already starting to dry when you do that. So you just get an even coat on and just leave it and walk away there. So, okay. Okay, so while that's drying, I'm just gonna let that sit there. I'm gonna come back over and I'm gonna give these a sand. Now you can distress the edges if you want. Now that's kind of why I didn't want to have a stain underneath here, because I wanted the front to be the part that really pops. So so I'm not going to obviously sand that. This is fine. It will dry and harden but it's, you know, kind of I mean, it's dry. It's just a little bit more unstable, I guess. If you were to scrape it with your finger, you could really take some more off, but it's definitely dry enough that we can assemble. So go ahead and remove the backing on this one, and then use those score lines to line that up. Here it should just sit right on the line, so that way, and then really make sure you get this straight at the bottom. If you get it somewhat uneven, then it might not stand properly. So really make sure that you get that bottom part as straight as possible. So yeah, look at it. I mean, there we go. So just even do what I did, just, you know, put it down, make sure it can stand, and make sure that that's fine. Oh yeah, there it is. Oh, forgot, you're gonna need to sand this as well. So there, now it's on her file. She doesn't get the most perfect of lineup on here. That's fine. We're wrapping it with string, so you're not even going to see that. So go ahead and put this piece on, and then just get that as even as you can. Now, like I said, it looked like one of her edges wasn't quite lined up exactly, but with the stain on there, you're not going to notice it at all. So there we go. Okay, set that one into place. Now do the same with this one. And then if you can, just try and handle this one on the sides. So don't put any pressure on it when you're first trying to get it lined up, because you want to be able to move it. As soon as you really press down, that adhesive really wants to take hold. So make sure you do your best to get it lined up, and it will slide as long as you're not too pushing on it too hard. So it's on there. I'm just going to make sure it can stand. There you go. So I'm good with that. So I'm just going to give it a gentle press. And there, that part is done. Okay, so next, leaves and my sandpaper. So I'm just going to do a very gentle sand. Okay, so now when I did these, my intentions were for them to just kind of hang off of there, but once I get that string on there, it wasn't as cooperative as I would have liked it to be. So that's why I didn't cut them with adhesive on the back, because I didn't think it would be an issue. So the string that you have, it's 4 feet long, so if you cut it into 3 pieces, it should be enough for you to wrap around each of your pumpkins a few times. Now how did I do this? This is what happens when I just do things and I don't remember. Okay, so you might have to put some tape on this to feed it through your leaves. There we go. Okay. Now I just grabbed a big chunk at the store as I was walking out the door, so my string piece is way longer than if you were to cut it into thirds. So hold on, I gotta find some scissors. Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of guess. Okay, so put the string on, kind of make them even in the center here, and yeah, because it's when you start to pull on the string that's when it wants to lift. So if you kind of have an idea where you want those to hang, you can go ahead and put some glue on there first, and then once that's good and dry, then you can go around and tie your string. So now that I know where I want it, because as soon as you start pulling on it, it'll do all sorts of things. And it's really just the back one that you need to glue, because the front one lays pretty good. But if you want your front one to lay a certain way, you might need just to put a little dab underneath there. But wood glue will work. The Gorilla Glue here works as well. Now, if you happen to have a really big Vaseline spot right where those leaves go, you may just want to give it a little wipe off out of the way, just because you're sometimes things like wax and oils and stuff make it a little bit more difficult for things to adhere to. Just a thought there, but just put some glue on there, and then just gently lay that where you want. Get your strings out of the way. Give that a good press. It's going to need to have a moment, depending on what type of glue you use as well. So I'm just going to let that sit. See, I have a feeling I used wood glue when I did this, because I don't remember if I had my crazy glue at home. So I'm just gonna leave it and set. Now it's kind of grabbed, but I don't want to start yanking on it yet. So I'll just let that dry for a few minutes, and then I will come right back. Okay, I'm back, and it seems like it should be fine. I'm not going to yank on it too hard, but it seems to be holding its own. So I'm just going to gently take my string, and I'm just going to wrap it around a few times. Whoops. Okay, fine. Okay. I'm going to have to sit down here. All right, so I think so it would hold. I came and tied a knot once in the back. That way when I came around to the front again, it's a little bit more steady. And then, so this one came up a little in the front, and that one was totally fine with me, so that's why I didn't glue that one down. But by all means, you can do what you need, and of course I just put my scissors away, so I'm just gonna snip that off. That's what happens when you clean up too soon. Okay, so I'm just going to snip. There we go. Don't like these scissors, but there we go, close enough. Let me fix that one later, but okay, good enough. All right, this piece. So by now, this piece should be dry. And depending if, you know, you want other coats or whatever, but as you can see, it just kind of gives it a washed out look. It still looks pretty like natural wood, but it just takes that yellow tone, and I didn't want that yellow toned wood and right onto the yellow of the pumpkin. So that's kind of why I did that, and it just washes it out, and it just presents itself a little bit better. So now, same thing here. If you find you've got way too much wax here and it's just going to be a big mess, then just, you know, take your cloth and just wipe it a little bit more. Like, I'm not, when I press on this, it's definitely not wet. I'm not getting any greasy residue, but just make sure that you just, when we wipe with the paper towel gently, just to help remove any extra, that you definitely do that. So take off your back and then just place it where you like. Make sure you're straight, because I know if it's not, you're not gonna be happy with yourself. Because, all right, so I've just laid it on there, and I'm kind of just looking at it like, yeah, we're good. So then just give it a good press. I mean, there is enough adhesive on the back that if it is on a little wax, you should still get some contact with your pumpkin. So anyways, there you go. I really like this one. It's, you know, I love that it's a little bit rustic in the front, and we've taught you guys a new technique, and I'm really looking forward to seeing yours on the group page. If any of you guys change the colors. I mean, I'm not so much a yellow person either, but it has its place in the fall, so that's why I really like it on this one. But yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed that project, and yeah, we will see you again next month. Thanks, guys.